My friends, the wait is over. The Epiphone Inspired by Gibson Custom Shop DC Les Paul Jr. is finally here. We don't even need an intro on this episode. We need to get right into this thing because I am so excited. This thing looks great. But what is this? It's got a screw loose. You know what that is? That's for our bridge. It's supposed to go there. So let's go ahead and put that back. So first things first, let's get some impressions. Okay. The finish. I was expecting full gloss, but it's not. I wouldn't really call it a satin either. It's like a super dulled down gloss. Like right here, it feels like it just wasn't completely buffed up. It feels a little bit more polished on the back side of the neck, but I feel like if you don't like this slightly more tacky feel, you likely could polish it out, but I think they were trying to make this look a little bit older, and if that's what they were going for, yes, I think they've succeeded. Kinda similar to Gibson's VOS. Just for a side-by-side comparison of finishes, this is a custom shop VOS straight out of the factory. You can see it's a little bit shinier, but still has a bit of a dullness to it, whereas this is just a little bit more dull. And as far as the weight, I'd say it's pretty chunky. Not like crazily heavy, but about where I was expecting it to be. How's our frets? They don't feel as scratchy as some of those other 800 and less Epiphones we've been reviewing, so I think they might take a little bit of extra time with these. Okay, that one's a bit scratchy. There's actually a reason why that's scratchy. We'll talk about that on the workbench. That might be a QC and or shipping detail thing. But the rest of the frets are nice. But now let's talk about the TV yellow finish. How did they do? I think this looks really good. Sometimes TV yellows can be tough to pull off and they look different when you start using a poly finish, but I would say this meets and or exceeds my expectations. And what's great about this being a wrap tail, if I hold it like this so you can't see that we don't have fret nibs, that really does look like a custom shop guitar to me, because we don't have any metric posts or anything else being like a big obvious telltale sign. So if you're thinking about one of these, based on my first impressions, yeah, I think you're gonna like it. But now let's talk about why these things are hyped. The Double Cut Les Paul Special. This was first introduced in the year 1958. I call it the disfigurement of 1958 because that's before the SG body shape comes out. So in a roundabout way, this is the original double cut Gibson shape, which lasted on the Juniors and Special through 1962 when they eventually take over the SG body shape as well. And there's lots of famous guys who have used these, lots of punk rockers and early rock and roll stars. So even though these were initially intended to be a student grade level guitar, they've always packed a punch. So if you want one of these, you have few options. You could buy a 50s or 60s original. Those are generally around $5,000-ish for a repaired and or refinished example. Or you can spend anywhere between $10 and $20K for an original one, depending on what finish it is and what condition. The cherry ones are generally less expensive. TV yellow is the prized one. Or you could look to the Gibson Custom Shop. Brand new, they are $4,199. However, on the used market or demo shop, we're talking $2,800 to $3,500-ish. You could also look to Gibson USA. They have a Gibson.com exclusive DC Junior, only one bridge pickup for $1,699. That seems like the main competition here, but remember, you can't go to any dealer to try those out. It has to be the Gibson Garage or Gibson.com. So that's not always an option for everybody if they want to try it out at first. So then realistically, you could look to the Gibson Rick Beato model. Those are $2,000 brand new. However, some used deals have been showing up for around $1,500-ish lately, but that's a satin finish and not exactly the same as far as being historically spec. And yeah, we could talk about the mid-80s and early 90s examples, but again, it's not 100% apples to apples. And you might enjoy knowing about the 2019-ish Les Paul Jr. DC tributes, as well as the Les Paul Special DC tributes. Again, they're not one for one, they're all top routed. It's not the same. But I bring all those up to put in your head where the prices of all your other alternatives currently are. So now for 2025, Epiphone comes out with this. Where do you think this should be priced? They came up with $1,000, $999, and I think that is a perfect spot for these. Because you got to remember, this is part of the Inspired by Gibson Custom Shop lineup. So we do indeed have Gibson Custom Shop P90 pickups in here. New for the 2025 IBGC models, we have a real rosewood fretboard back on here, so that's a great selling point. They even give you the fanciness of the mother of pearl dot inlays, which aren't historically accurate, but hey, they're cool. We've got the Gibson headstock shape, still have the Epiphone logo though. It's a one-piece mahogany neck with the desirable TV yellow finish. That's currently the only color we have. Really hoping for a pelham blue in the future as well as the regular cherry red, but hey, they're just testing the market out. I'm sure we'll get more colors eventually. If that's not enough, look at this. It comes with a hardshell case. These things are just such a fantastic value. The only thing you have to get over is the Epiphone branding. It's made in China, so not everybody's going to like that. And the fact that we don't have a nitro finish yet. There's nothing else to really complain about on this. Because on top of that, they're going to be readily available at all dealers. It's not like a .com exclusive like we were talking about before. You will be able to get your hands on one of these somewhere. So based on first impressions, yep, this lives up to my expectations. Now, had they priced these at $1,200, do I still think they would have sold? Yes, but that $999 is that perfect price, because anymore and you'd just be looking at the other IBGC models as a better value. As far as case candy, not a lot going on here. Just your usual Epiphone hang tags and stickers. Got a truss rod adjustment tool as well as your bridge adjustment, a singular case key with a double silica packet, and for historical preservation, the original box tag. Well, that's enough of first impressions. Let's go ahead, throw it onto the workbench, do the deep dive on its parts and specs, and then finally play this thing to see if it's truly worth it. Let's go ahead and start with our pickups. We got two Soap Bar P90s. Now in their advertising, they call them Custom Shop Gibson P90 pickups. And while yes, that is technically accurate, they also use these on Gibson USAs unless it's doing like a stacked P90. But it's labeled Rhythm P90 Soap Bar in the neck and the complementary Lead Soap Bar in the bridge. I get readings of 7.98 in the neck, bridge position 7.98, and they play together nicely at about 4. But now as far as how they mount these in the cavities, they have a foam pad with springs, so that means you should have plenty of height adjustment room if you need it. I went ahead and took the neck pickup one out. Now this is not a loose foam, it actually has an adhesive on the backside, so I don't suggest ripping it out of yours, but I did it for documentation purposes so we could see what kind of neck tenon we've got going on. And we do indeed have the long neck showing. But what's really scary to me is there's nothing right here. You do not see the neck joining onto the body. That finish hides it beautifully. And you might be curious, how many pieces is this body made out of? Just looking at it, I mean, I'm kind of suspicious of this area, but otherwise, I mean, it's looking pretty good. But if you look at the actual end grain, I only see one seam line, and it's right there in the center, right by our strap button. So I do believe these are actually just a two-piece body. And the pickup covers are the same one that Gibson uses, the UC452B branded ones. So without a doubt, we've got the good stuff here. But now our bridge. It is indeed Gibson branded on the backside. That's what that little G is for. So this is authentic hardware. Now, as far as intonation and whatnot, we'll have to check that once I get it strung back up. But historically speaking, these wrap tail pieces, they're not the best. You might decide to upgrade it to an intonatable wrap tail piece like a hip shot. That's completely up to you. As far as our wiring, regular stuff. 2 volumes, 2 tones. One for the neck, one for the bridge, 3-way toggle switch over here. It feels like they might actually be using Gibson knobs. Like they're very close if not, but you've got the thumb bleeders on there, which is a historic spec. You can tell the poker chip's a little different. And I would say the toggle switch feels clicky, even though they say they're using the high-end stuff. But overall, I would say all that checks out. But what's kind of cool about there not being an ugly neck tenon, if you can live with these screw holes, you could technically run it as a pick guard off. Just put a whole bunch of stickers on it, maybe. But here's what the pick guard itself looks like. It is 5-ply, black on back and the top. But it's a thin black, wide white, then more thin layers. Helps let that white layer stand out more. But we can also take a second to appreciate the wood grain on this one. That's going to vary example to example, but I like what I'm seeing over here. I think this is a very nice one, and if they all look anywhere close to this, I think people will be very happy with these. But moving on from our 2-piece mahogany body, we've got the 1-piece mahogany neck with rosewood fretboard. Now, full disclosure, I did go ahead and condition this because it was just a little dry looking, but I don't think it really changed the color too much. I was really hoping that they weren't just rebranding the Indian Laurel as rosewood, but I can tell you, this is a new species that we have not seen on the previous ones. it's a lot smoother feeling. It's quite nice. It's got some good chocolatey colorations to it as well. However, I did notice a few small QC things. Right up here, you can see the fretboard is a little bit more rough. Now, this looks way worse than it actually is. It's not like there's gouges deep down in the fretboard. It just needed a little bit more sanding, so it doesn't show up when you look at it with really direct lighting like this. But again, we do have our real mother-of-pearl dot inlays, just as an extra bonus feature. But now let's talk about the frets. So I was showing you earlier how, oh, these feel great. They're better than the standard Epiphone fret wire, except for like in a few areas right here. And that's because something has happened to our crown. It's been worn down. It's actually rough right there. And that's true on a few of these frets. Now, before you go and say, these new Epiphones are garbage, that could have happened in shipping. Companies like ESP actually ship with a fret guard, and Gibson actually did that back in the late 2010s. But sometimes when a guitar is in the case, it can press the strings down, and that's why it's a good idea to put something in between your frets and the strings when you ship an instrument, because this can happen. And if you remember, this intonation screw was loose. It's possible it jumped up here, got caught under the string for a bit, and did that in transit, and then eventually made it its way loose down over here. I'm not making excuses for anybody, because maybe it did just leave the factory like that, but I do know that can happen, and the fact that it's only like that in a few locations makes me think something did happen. But that's what's nice. I bought this brand new. I'm going to call up the dealer, probably send it down to them. They'll just do a level recrown in that spot, and it'll probably be good. Or I'll just get a whole new one. But if you also bought one of these and have the same thing, that's when you need to let me know, because then we know something's up. But as far as detailed specs, we get about 1.7 inches at the nut, increasing to 211 at the 12. First fret neck depth, 0.81, 0.94 by the 12. This is officially labeled as a 1960 reissue. They did that because it has the slightly slimmer neck. If you don't like D-shaped necks, you're going to be fine with this because that is totally C through and through. There's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. You know, I thought I was kind of feeling that with my hand, but I wanted to verify it here. C-shape, yes, but it's almost a soft V. Yeah, sure enough. It's got just a little bit more of a hump on the back than your standard C, but that helps it fill in your hand. That is great that I was able to get visual confirmation on that. It's a good neck profile. I measure a 24 3/4 inch scale, and with the stop bar installed, I would say, yeah, that's pretty much centered right there. So I'd imagine these should intonate decently enough. As far as the fret ends, I had somebody saying all the Epiphones I've ever tried are really sharp. I wouldn't say it's sharp by any means. However, it really looks like they just filed them down and then do minimal shaping. It would be nice if they could be a little bit more shaped, because I could see how some guys might find that a bit sharp. But I would view this as okay from the factory. You can get a fret file and round those off more if you'd like. But now moving on to the headstock, it's the open book style shape. It does have a Pearl Epiphone logo, but it's kind of one of their slightly cheaper ones that you can hardly even tell it's actually Pearl. Then you get your Les Paul Special branding. And I suppose this is something that Epiphone could still improve upon, because I bet what we'll see next are nitro finishes being used on Epiphones, and then we'll see like the two-way truss rods being installed. But for 2025, it's the standard Epiphone style, and a 3-screw truss rod cover, although built to historic stylings with the wide beveled edge. And we have the vintage style small button tuners with the push and bushings. While putting this together, I noticed something kind of strange. The bridge pickup route is like way overdone. That is quite a significant gap. And while I'd love to say, don't worry about it though, because the pickguard covers it over, that is sadly not the truth. That's one of those things where until you notice it, you probably don't see it, but now it's all you see. The same is true over here, but the neck pickup is much more cleanly routed, so I would say Epiphone has some improving to do over here on that one. Or perhaps this one is just a weird fluke. But yeah, you can even see it like right here. Now that we've got the strings back on, let's double check our scale. So yes, indeed, 24 3/4 is right here, which lines up with the middle of the bridge over here and gives us a bit of extra room on the low strings. And we can test it on my new strobe tuner. That's about in tune. 12th fret. That looks about good to me, just a hair flat. A string looks good. 12th fret. Just a little flat. D strings in tune. Again, a little flat. But what's most important to me are these top strings. They actually intonate just about perfectly. You know, as far as wrap tail goes anyway. So I think it's perfectly fine. You're not going to have major intonation issues with this. But again, remember, you can upgrade this bridge to something else that gives you better. I don't really feel like fiddling around with this for a couple more hours to get those perfect, because the top three are the most important in my opinion. So I would say that gets a pass. As far as, yes, you can set it up to be good. I can't really say how is it from the factory, because that screw was loose when we unboxed it. But now let's move on to the back for even more fun. So we've got a strap button in our regular position back here, as well as one on the bottom edge. But look at this route. Holy cow, that's beautiful. So ridiculously cleanly done. I didn't see anything about what capacitors they were using, just the 500K CTS pots, but look at that. It's bumblebees. Fantastic. That solder work is fairly clean, all things considered as well. Not too much extra, just enough. I was curious where the QR code was hidden on this model. I've never seen it in the control cavity before, but there you go. It gives you a nice look at what the mahogany actually looks like that they're using here before they apply the TV yellow finishing to it. I'm impressed by that. Even the back plate's kind of cool. It's got that metallic Gibson inspired by Gibson custom shop. This thing's extra beefy. And we've got a plastic output jack plate that is 3-ply. As far as the edges of the instrument, I already told you, the finish feels a bit tackier along this edge, like they didn't fully buff it. But so far, these new IBGCs, I like their finish a lot better than the first generation, because some of those standards just kind of looked cheap with that. I'm not sure if the new ones are like that. If anybody's interested in a new guitar, dang, one of those so we can see it, I would be very appreciative. Otherwise, let's move on to our neck. I went ahead and did a control test here. So I did my cleaning process to the first half of the neck and then left it alone, as you see from the factory. So we can see this finish will easily gloss up and look a little bit nicer if you don't want that dull down hue. But this is how it starts life from the factory. It's got that slight dullness and I really want to say tackiness to it. So I think some people might not actually like this finish because even after you polish it up, it still has a little bit of tackiness to it. So try one at a store to see if it's right for you. I think a player might actually want to lightly sand down some of the finish, but there's the difference that a polishing will make if you were curious about that and the sheen that it would have. But ultimately, I would say not quite a fan of this finish. But it's not so bad that I would not recommend the model because it looks the part. And after you play it for a little bit, it'll naturally buff up. Something else I started to notice after doing that and looking closely at the finish is there's quite a few small contaminations. For example, right here, if you run your nail along that, you can feel a click because there's something in the finish there. There's like 2 or 3 right there. Now, do you really notice it while you play? No, but it's kind of one of those nitpicky QC details. Because once I noticed those, I looked closer on the body and you can see quite a few small little areas like that, where you can see something is just lightly embedded in the finish every once in a while. Here's our handcrafted in China sticker. You can see the 2 mahogany wings that they put on the headstock to create our open book, which is correct to how Gibson does it. And we do have the 3-in-a-line style Kluson tuners. And then our 2024 serial number looks like it dates to December, and then the double diamond is the Inspired by Gibson custom shop emblem. But all said and done, this one weighs just a tad under 8 pounds, 7 pounds, 15.7 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. I like that middle position. Now just our neck. Pretty deep sounding, but not too muddy. Then our bridge. Now let's try a little bit of dirt. Now let's see how the pickups roll off. Okay, pretty cool. Now let's try that neck. Seems to be about the same as the bridge. 7's kind of that sweet spot, but you got that hidden extraness there if you need it. Let's go back to the clean channel for a second. It's a really weird tone control. Usually when I think tone, I think you get the bright sound. And then by about 6 or 7, it's like really dark. But this one doesn't do that. It doesn't really get dark until like 1. It's almost like another volume. So certainly something to keep in mind. All right, final thoughts time. The tones, I thought they were okay. Wasn't the best. I wouldn't say this inspired me to play any differently. However, if you have been in the market for a guitar that looks like this, and this price range with the Gibson electronics, having a hardshell case, and being close enough for most people appeals to you, I would 100% suggest trying one of these. What we found in the review and demo piece was not perfect. We've got a mystery fret issue, but to be honest, when playing that, I didn't even notice any of that. So I think that's just, if you're trying to feel for it, you can. This is perfectly playable as is. And those few finished contaminations, they're not a big deal at the end of the day. They're not highly noticeable. So I still think I would say, yes, this is a good deal. Just keep in mind things like you might have an over-routed bridge pickup like mine. But again, it's one of those things you don't even notice it until you hit it in the light just right. It does not affect the guitar as far as its playability. What was most important to me is we actually had the Gibson P90s in here, and it can be reasonably intonated even with the non-perfect bridge. But if nothing else, I hope this video helped you make an informed decision whether one of these is right for you or not. I know I enjoyed checking it out, so thank you, Michael P., for doing the new guitar day of this one. I might be curious, isn't there a whole bunch of issues on this one? Yeah, I reached out to Michael, and he said, yeah, let's go ahead and replace it. So I'll go ahead and do that for him now. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.